Welcome to the City. I'm Anthony Wilson, the Public Information Officer for the City of San Angelo. And joining us today in our brand new studio is our District 5 City Councilman, Lane Carter. Lane, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
And thank you for helping to inaugurate this new space.
Absolutely. I'm glad we were being able to be the first one to be here.
You bet. Now, you have served as the District 5 City Councilman for about 2 years now.
2 years.
What do you know now about the job that you didn't know 2 years ago?
I'll probably say the number one thing is detail. Detail in every decision is imperative before you go into the council chambers to vote on an issue. Learning every side, front and back. And I'm not saying that you go in there with a decision made. There has been times that I've gone in and changed the way that I've thought about an issue once you get the agenda the week before to go in there on Tuesday and make the decision. So.
Can you think of a specific instance where that happened and where the detail has really been key for you in making a critical decision for the City Council?
I would probably go back to the first few months that I was on council and talk about short-term rentals. I did not know how I was going to approach that, and I thought I knew a decision that I was going into until that Tuesday that we actually made the decision. Of course, I waited to make that decision so I could hear from the people that were coming up to the podium and giving their stance.
And that decision seems to kind of have worked out for the community. I mean, I know there was a lot of hubbub about that at the time, but things seem to kind of have settled in as far as short-term rentals are concerned.
We came up with an ordinance that I think kind of suits everything. I didn't know how it would work out. So far, it has shown to be good so far.
Has the learning curve been steep for a new city councilman?
Learning curve is always steep right at the beginning. The more that you submerge yourself into it at first to learn all the aspects of it, the better. I tried to do that when I was first elected. But you learn every day. Every day you learn something new, something that you didn't know, and things that you thought you knew completely changes. So it goes up and down, but it has been a pleasure to be able to learn all the aspects of it.
And I guess that's because the width and the breadth of city government is really massive when you stop to think about providing everything from public safety to water utilities to streets and bridges to parks.
It is.
It's really a wide breadth of services that the city offers.
It is. And it's always changing too. So you have to take that factor into where government mandates come in, and you have to make decisions based on those.
You know, among the city council members, you're one of them who is really actively involved in the community, even outside of the city council setting. When you're out in the community, what are the things that people generally come up to you and talk about?
I get hit with a slew of questions, from broken water lines in their neighborhood to the water system as a whole in general. Potholes and street reconstructions, a wide range of everything.
Are the issues typically micro in nature, that is, they're related to their specific neighborhood, or are they a wider perspective that takes into account the whole of the community?
A little bit of both. I get hit with pothole questions and can you get this fixed, and what's going on with Bell Street, when is College Hills going to start, and I'll have to explain to them, well, this is the step that we are in at the current, and tell them this is what we're expecting. If everything goes right, we can be at this point at this time, and try to answer the question as best as possible.
Of course, streets are one of the 5 priorities that the City Council has adopted, and we're going to talk about some of those here in a moment. But what are a couple of things that you hope to accomplish in the remainder of your term that may be outside the scope of those City Council adopted priorities?
If you recall, a few weeks ago, we had one agenda item come up, and this was on the speed bumps over on Madison Street. So safety around school zones is one of my priorities, not just in my area, but throughout the entire town. You'll see speeding, reckless driving around the schools, whether it be with the lights flashing during the morning drop-off and pickup or during the day. I would like to see certain changes go on to where speed limits maybe change if you're in a certain radius around school zones, just for the safety of the parents dropping off and the kids itself. Another thing that I'd like to see is ASU, which is an icon in District 5. It is the center point of my entire district. I would love to see, it's just my alma mater also, it expand to where we bring more students in, as we have been, and different types of degrees. They have been great with that so far, and I think that is crucial for both our town and our city tax base and growth.
Well, of course, they are growing like crazy out there. I mean, it looks like a construction zone out there in a good way on the ASU campus. What role do you think city government can play in helping with the growth of Angelo State?
Just facilitating any type of project, getting it rolling as much as possible. I would love to see that partnership continue throughout the entire length of ASU in this town. It's vital.
Last year's city budget held the line on spending with 3 exceptions. We got more firefighters, we got more police officers, and we got pay raises for city employees. Right now, city management is working on the 2018-2019 budget. What are you anticipating the parameters of that financial plan are going to be this year?
I would say the parameters are should stay the same. We're still playing catch up, in my opinion, on our civil service and pay raises, and also on our water and streets. I believe that we should stay the same with that budget and continue to improve the water system and the streets. And fire and police, they are behind in personnel and equipment. That was one of the main things that I ran on during my campaign, and one thing that I will stick with.
Of course, at the same time, the property tax rate has been at 77.6 cents for about 5 years now. Can you foresee any circumstances in which you or the rest of the council would support any sort of tax increase?
I wouldn't say an increase. Of course, I think we should aim towards the decrease, but that's going to go along the lines with the economic development, and I think we have done a great job on trying to bring in businesses to help supplement the residential's, the constituents from having to have so much burden on our tax rate to where they're funding everything alone. So if we bring in the commercial business, I think that would be great.
So in other words, what you foresee is the economic development paying off in such a way that the burden shifts so much from the residential taxpayer to the commercial taxpayer with the growth of that tax base.
Yes, and I wouldn't say burden, there's a fine line. I don't want to say that the businesses should be heavily hit, but there is a fine line to where bringing more economic development, more businesses in, can help lessen that 77.6 cents.
Water and streets seem cemented as the top priorities for San Angelo and the City Council for this year and for years to come. What will you be pushing to happen in regards to water?
Developing the Hickory Aquifer to the full capacity with the wells, number of wells that we can have. That would probably be number one. Number two would be selling the ranch after we develop the field and get the amount of water supply that we need as a city. Sell the ranch, get that out from underneath us, and try to recoup as much money as possible. Then move on to focusing on our water system, our water treatment plant, and future water supplies at that.
With the sale of the Ford Ranch, you feel confident that the city will be able to recoup a lot of the costs that it invested in securing those Hickory Aquifer water rights?
I believe so. I'm hopeful for that. From what we have seen so far, I believe we can recoup as much as possible.
And when you talk about water infrastructure and the water treatment plant, explain to our viewers why those are critical needs. People may not understand exactly how old the water treatment plant is.
It's very old, and it can only handle a certain amount of treatment per day. So if we're going to be looking at expanding the Hickory, and we're going to be looking at more water supplies elsewhere, if we're going to be expanding in population, if we're hopeful for that in the city of San Angelo, we're going to must have water. And the more water is going to need a water treatment plant that can supply that and not have a limit to it.
Are you also confident that the city can develop more water supply?
I believe so. With the help of the West Texas Water Partnership and keeping that partnership strong, I believe we can find some water elsewhere and develop that and get some fresh water for us.
As you know, the City Council has made significant headway when it comes to streets, which if water is the #1 priority, streets is probably 1A, and I'm going to tick off a few of the things that you guys have done. You have approved a 10-year, $80 million plan to rebuild San Angelo's worst streets, including Bell Street, which is currently under reconstruction. This summer, we'll complete the 4th year of an 8-year cycle to maintain every city street, and a new asphalt recycler is smoothing streets before they require reconstruction. Is there anything more that you think that the city can and should be doing in order to improve San Angelo's streets?
I think we need to stay strong and stay on schedule and keep that task at hand. I would like to perfect the Benedetti machine, the asphalt recycler, 100%. I know we had a little bit of problem keeping staffing for such a specialized machine, competing with the oil field rates that they were paying. So if we can kind of stay competitive with them and form a crew that can stay with it, I believe that Benedetti machine can be crucial to helping the streets more than what the reconstructions can do. We can go out into neighborhoods, and once we perfect that, I believe we can look at getting a secondary and getting another crew trained to where they can go within the neighborhoods and those streets that aren't as bad as Bell Street or MLK or College Hills, which is coming up. We can still go and do a residential street and get it looking into perfection.
You mentioned earlier about the reconstruction of College Hills from the Loop to Avenue N, and people want to have that project completed. And of course, it's a matter of sort of pairing big projects like the reconstruction of Bell Street with smaller projects like the repaving of College Hills on the other end of that thoroughfare. When you explain that to people, that it's really a matter of sort of financial planning, do they seem to understand that there is a method to the madness of why we're doing this street at this time and this street at another time?
After some explanation, they start to understand. I had a question from a gentleman of why we were paving the south side of the loop of College Hills when the north side was so much worse, and I had to explain it's the financial game. We could fit this in with this funding and get that complete and then work on this massive scale project from Avenue N to the loop.
You buy, renovate, and rent homes. Before we went on air, you were telling me you have 18 homes now
18.
That you own and rent out. What sort of insights, as that sort of housing developer, has that given you in regards to the city's development processes?
A lot of insight, exactly, knowing what kind of construction is going on, what that entails, whether it be framing, electrical, plumbing. In relation to the permit department, personally, I think the permits that I've had to pull it's been a good experience, and not just from being a councilman. I don't get any special treatment. I try to stay away from that as much as possible. But what I have seen is consistency. It still becomes a problem in the plumbing and the electrical, the two specialties that you have to sub out for licensing. So consistency, having one inspector come in, check it off. If there's anything wrong, then you'll need to fix that and come back for a secondary. If there is a second inspector to come back the second time, getting the same report, and if he sees something else that needs to be fixed, trying to get that as consistent as possible, knowing what you need to fix all up front. And I think in relation to residential, that can relate to commercial as well. 100%, that would help out our businesses.
So do you see any movement in order to address those consistency issues?
I do. John James has done a great job staying in touch with us with the program, the computer program that is going to allow to expedite the permitting department and getting those permits executed faster with site plans. The staff there, I know Rachel goes out and she tries to tap on with the consistency, meeting with each inspector, being in the field with them, and knowing exactly how they're rating each project and trying to get them on the same level playing field.
So is there more that you think can be done in order to streamline that development process?
I think if we stay with the consistency and the education of if someone comes in for a permit, exactly what the needs are up front. Maybe even get the preliminary meetings done to where all departments can come in and meet with the client and say, this is what you need, 100%, to where they can go out, get their site plan, get their designs, draw up the specs, and come back with everything and not miss anything. That way they can expedite their side of it as well as the city side.
One of the things that you've seen as a city council member is issues that can inflame a lot of passion. And you faced that last year with sewer line improvements
Yes.
in your district in Santa Rita. How do you try to approach those hot button issues whenever those come before the council?
You have to take all personal feelings out of it from yourself and take all of the constituents' personal feelings in and try to see their side of it. And big picture of it, yes, a lot of people would not like it in the neighborhood, but when you look at the big picture of the necessity of it from the point of where the sewer line is going in for the lift station and how many houses are impacted by it upstream before it hits that part. That's how you kind of have to approach it and try to make them understand of exactly how crucial that point would be, and keep at that.
So, and you sort of segued perfectly into my next question is, when you vote, how do you weigh what's best perhaps for your district versus what's best for the community at large?
It's definitely a community at large ideal. You know, San Angelo is one of a small enough town still that if you use the 3-point reference system where I know 3 people and they know 3 people, you know the entire town. So you've got to take that out of perspective of how will that impact this street or this residence, and look at it on, if I vote this way, it's going to impact the entire town in a positive or negative manner, and vote accordingly.
Mayor Brenda Gunter has made economic development the centerpiece of her platform and her service thus far. What do you think San Angelo has done right when it comes to luring and creating more jobs locally?
Incentivizing companies through Costa DC and the Chamber, they have done a heck of a job. I applaud them. We have brought in a couple businesses outside and from within, incentivizing the growth of certain industries in San Angelo. That way they can provide local constituents and neighbors with jobs and keep that growing.
What do you think can be done in order to even further that a little bit more?
I would say with the incentives, try to get those tax incentives to where these companies can afford to expand and have that checks and balances system. That way, if we give an incentive for a company to expand, they're following through with everything that they need to. And if that proves to show that, yes, this has been working, which it has, we can expand within and bring it and bait the little fish and the big fish will come.
Is there a balance that has to be struck between trying to bring in new business but also helping local businesses, existing businesses to grow and expand?
I think so. I think so, because I'm high in favor of mom and pop stores. I do not want to put them out of business, but I also want to keep the that economic development continuing to where more population can come in, more tax base, and will also help the smaller business mom and pops along the way.
What do you like most about serving on the City Council?
I think you said it, serving. Serving, it is, it's such a pleasure to be able to just, it's volunteer, it's thankless, and just being able to get out there. Someone has a problem, they can come to you and say, hey, I have this pothole, minute problem in the big picture, but it is something that they see every day. And for them to come to me and say, hey, can you fix this? I said, let me see what I can do, and I will do it accordingly. And to see the satisfaction on their face afterwards, or thank you, or thank you for restriping this, this intersection that my kids cross. And also the big picture things, thank you for looking out for our water supply and our future. Serving in that kind of manner it's just been great.
You know, I'm sure you must have this experience because I have it being on our television station as much as I am. People coming up to you in the grocery store, you know, and constantly wanting to ask you questions or share an opinion. I assume you get a lot of that.
I do. I see you on Channel 17 a lot.
That's good.
Yes, it is. They come up with any questions, and I have no problem taking 15, 20, 30, an hour out of my time if I can help them out in any way. I would love to do so.
You're now in the third year of a 3-year term. Do you anticipate running for re-election next spring?
I do. There's still a lot of things on the plate that I would like to see follow through, such as our water infrastructure and our street plan and economic development, that after re-election I'd love to continue to do so.
You know, you have your own business. You're serving on the city council, which is a very time-consuming job, and you're a fairly new father.
I am.
How do you manage to juggle all those things?
Well, he turns 2 in the end of this month, so it is a time factor. Keeping up with him, keeping up with council and business. You learn to manage it real fast. You make it what you want it to be. You can let it consume you. You can learn to not let it consume you, and expedite a process faster to where what should take 20 minutes, you can get done in about 5. That way you have more time for family, you have more time for all the other activities that you have. I do not like to neglect family, so it's the learning curve at first was hard. It took a lot of time, but once you get it under your belt, you learn how to do it.
If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can either email me, lane.carter@cosatx.us. They can call me at 325-213-1987. And please leave a message on the voicemail if they don't get a hold of me. Working in construction, I'm not always being able to hear the phone. So leaving a message is crucial for me to get back to them. They can also text me at that same number. But I say the voicemails would probably be a great asset, because nowadays you have a lot of telemarketers calling, and I'll call back a lot of missed numbers, and it'll be federal student aids wanting to be paid off. Everybody's getting those phone calls, but those 3 options, if they can reach me that way, I'll get back to them as soon as possible or answer the phone right away.
We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, Anthony.
And we hope you'll join us for the next episode of The City.